easygoing guys, but that's not your typical takeaway from the campaign trail. When it comes to temperament, Barack Obama and John McCain couldn't be more different. And on November 4th, that's what could matter most to voters. Ed Henry here to talk about that. Temperament, Ed.
Well, Campbell, it's interesting. We hear these caricatures that John McCain is angry, Barack Obama is calm and cool, but it turns out that what we see of them on the campaign trail, not always a good barometer of how they perform as president.
They could not have been more different in the final debate. John McCain relentlessly dishing out rapid-fire charges, while Barack Obama was killing him with calmness.
We're not going to do that in my administration.
If I can answer the question. Number one, I want to cut taxes for 95% of Americans.
McCain, who has a reputation for Senate temper tantrums, played into Democratic charges that he's erratic by abruptly rushing back to Washington to deal with the financial crisis.
I'll suspend my campaign and return to Washington.
In contrast, Obama has won high marks for appearing unflappable through the crisis. But a new Time magazine cover story notes the temperament voters perceive in a politician is not always what they actually get when a candidate makes it to the Oval Office.
One of the examples was John Kennedy, who also seemed very cool and unruffled. And the historian said that actually, when he was in office, he was often hot-tempered and fiery. And except for the Cuban Missile Crisis, he often lost at some time.
As a candidate, Ronald Reagan faced Democratic charges he was dangerous and too rigid a conservative. And yet he was an effective president in part by reaching across the aisle to work with liberal Democratic Speaker Tip O'Neill.
Senator Obama wants government to do the job.
To his supporters, McCain's feistiness shows he's ready to take charge in a crisis. Though all the eye-rolling suggests that as president, he may not always listen to contrarian views. Obama's deliberate style might help him build consensus as president. And yet even some Democrats worried this summer that he just didn't have enough fire in the belly.
Temperament ultimately is in the eye of the beholder. Is it impulsive or is it decisive? Is it angry or is it determined? I think when people are watching the candidate, they make that determination themselves.
And in the end, it's really a gut check for voters about how they think a candidate's personality will have an impact on how they eventually govern. We hear all this about now John McCain, well, you know, he's angry, he's tough. You remember Lyndon Johnson, it actually worked pretty well for him. He grabbed people by the lapels, but at that time, the Times demanded to get civil rights legislation through, you needed sort of a bull in a china shop. There are other times in history that doesn't work so well.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what everybody thinks. In fact, we've got a panel here to talk about this more. But Ed Henry, thanks for teeing it up for us. Coming up at